Hi, I'm Daniel Antunes reporting for Kirklees Local TV. On today's show, we're joined by Musica Kirklees CEO and Principal Thom Meredith. First formed in 1992, this independent organisation has helped thousands of people achieve their full musical potential since its inception and is set to help countless more. Honestly, it's a pleasure having you today. Honestly, someone so dedicated, it's an honour. Now, how are you doing today, Thom?
I'm great, thank you. Yeah,
that's
very
great
good.
to hear. Now, so wow, 28 years, that's a long time, and you've done so much. How did it start, and what were your original intentions?
Well, the 1992 was when we initially formed Musica Kirklees, or back then it was called Kirklees Music School. I wasn't around at that stage, I hasten to add, but I joined the organisation in 1999. So I've done just over 20 years there, which I suppose shows you in a way that it's a good place for people to work for, and I enjoy working there. It was set up when the council no longer wanted to run the music service as part of its in-house services. So we actually became an independent organisation. We were one of, at that stage, just 13 across the whole country who set up as independent music services. And, well, we've been running up until the present day, so obviously must have been doing something right.
Oh, so you really put yourselves out there. So what major growth have you seen in this time period?
There's been a lot of change happen. I think looking back on to my time in education when I was actually learning an instrument, it was provided for us. We were actually given free use of instruments and free lessons that we could access. And obviously times have changed. It's a lot harder, I think, now to get that kind of funding for things that are not the core musical curriculum, or the core curriculum in schools rather. So I suppose what we've seen is a change to people having to pay for lessons, or lessons being bought in by schools, so that children can still access that kind of vital input. Because I think it's one of those things that unless you can experience music and you can be part of it, and you can learn from it, and you can make music with others, you don't know the power of it. You don't know how it affects you, and how it it can be a real motivator for people as well.
Yeah.
That involvement in music. So I suppose the change has been partly financial, partly in terms of the different musical trends that are going on. And I think if you look back into the 20th century, there was a big emphasis on the more classical Western traditional music, I suppose, and as we've got more towards the present day, there's a lot of input on all sorts of music from all over the world, the much more contemporary, the lighter side of music as well, and I think the important thing for us is to keep all those different traditions going, and to try and feed all the different elements of music that there are. So.
Okay. So you've just touched upon kind of youth involvement, and obviously the youth is our future. Why is nurturing youth talent so important?
It's been my passion all my life. Well, I suppose since I started work as a teacher, you go into that profession because what you want to do is invest in young people. As you say, young people are the future, and unless we can give them the best possible experiences, then we are not doing our job as adults. And I think there are all sorts of pressures. I think there are more pressures on young people now than there ever were, and quite often it's growing up without that sort of set career path to go down. I think a lot of people now will engage much more on a sort of portfolio career of all sorts of different things, and try the water in lots of different types of employment. And the musical side, in a world where we've got technology happening, so if you wanted to, you could meet with all your friends from the privacy of your own room. You'd never have to go out and meet people. But actually, I think it's vital that we keep encouraging that sort of human interaction, and music is one of those ways that lets that happen. Yes, there's a lot of dedicated practice that goes on for each individual, and they've got to try and make sure that they're getting as good as they possibly can on their instrument. But then the joy of it is going and working with other people and forming a band or playing in an orchestra, and just being part of a bigger event. And I think that kind of collaboration is really important for all of our well-being, but especially for young people going up to experience that.
So really it's about building kind of networks for these young people, you'd say?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that the more of those kind of networks that you've got, and the more different relationships we can foster, the more resilient we become as human beings. And there is a big agenda at the moment about well-being, health and well-being for people, and I think to ensure that people have got that ability to call on their inner reserves and to have things that make them feel good as individuals, which is what music and the arts in general, and sports as well, that's a very similar sort of crossover. That's what that kind of thing gives to people. Yeah.
Those are some really nice statements, I'll be honest. Yeah. So there's a history of classical music being enjoyed in Huddersfield now, and Kirklees, of course, with live compositional music not receiving the same reception it used to. How are you looking to bring back contemporary audiences?
Yeah, I think you're right. There's been a lot of work or a lot of exposure for classical music, and we're lucky in this area that we've got so many different choirs. There's male voice choirs, female voice choirs, mixed voice choirs. There's amateur orchestras that we've got. There's all sorts of groups that are making music and doing it really, really well. And that's one of the reasons why I moved to this area, 30 odd years ago, was because of the incredible musical tradition. But those musical traditions change, and what we've got to try and do, and what our organisation tries to do, is to embrace everything that's going on. So whether it be moving to steel pans and gospel music, or whether it's using djembe or sort of different drumming techniques and things, it's trying to include that sort of thing in what we do, but also looking to where young people are telling us they want to be making music. So that the pop and rock scene is something that we've got our own rock school now that works to train young people up, and they go and do their own gigs, and it's building that kind of confidence not only as a player but also as a performer. I think that's the hardest thing sometimes for young people to get over is the fact that you could stand on stage and you could play your instrument really well, or you could sing really well, but unless you're engaging with the audience and you're actually making a connection with those people, then the music becomes a little bit of a non-event, really. So it's the communication that is really vital for people. So those skills are some of the things that we work on as well. But you're right that it's taking things, bringing things up to date, so we don't lose what we've had in the past, but we're embracing everything that's into sort of contemporary culture now.
So how exactly are you being reactive to these contemporary sounds and tastes?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question just at the moment, because we're in the middle of looking at a big inclusion project that we're setting up. We're trying to apply for some funding as well to back this, and I think one of the things that we need to do more of is listening to young people, and so it's going around to schools or to clubs and to making sure that we get that sort of feedback, so that people we know what young people are interested in, and we're not just sort of saying, well, let's just give people what they want, because there's also an element of having to try and educate people. So it's that balance between providing things that you think actually it'd be really good for people if they had this, but also they could be switched on to music if we gave them the kind of things that they're really interested in. We've got a big jazz group at the moment, very, very successful jazz tradition that's happening in this area. And again, young people are really, really coming on board with that kind of thing. And I think part of it is the improvisation, is the making things up on the spur of the moment, so that music isn't just written down and you play the notes that are in front of you, but actually you're given that freedom to be more expressive and to experiment with all sorts of sounds that your instrument can make. So it's those sort of things, and when we talk to young people and get their feedback, that's the kind of thing that they're really enjoying. But then again, with the orchestra, when we get the feedback from them, they're saying they love going on tours and doing concerts in sort of maybe different places in Europe, which has been an incredible experience for them. But they've also said to us, can we go into some primary schools and can we lead some workshops with young people? Because one of the things that I think switched them onto music was seeing somebody who was perhaps not too far removed from their age actually being involved in music themselves, and getting them turned onto it and thinking, well, I could sit and play the cello in an orchestra. I could do that. It's not something that's switched off to me. It's it's a possibility. So they've done some of those workshop leading sessions as well in primary schools, which have been really effective. Yeah.
So it's really about kind of inspiring people in those different ways. Okay.
Yeah.
So now you've told us a lot about Musica Kirklees, and what you've told us just sounds so inspiring. Now, can you tell us a bit about the man behind it all, Thom Meredith? What is your musical background? What influenced you as a youngster to get into music?
Right. I was very lucky. I had my parents were very keen. They weren't musicians themselves, but they were very keen that they gave each one of us, and I'm from a family of 5 children, they gave each one of us the opportunity to play instruments and to get involved in singing and things. So there was one stage where all of my brothers and sisters, we were all playing instruments. It must have been a nightmare in our house to listen to all that practice going on. But that's right. But we were, as I say, we were very lucky. We were supported, and my parents, everyone goes through that stage of thinking, oh, I don't know if I can be bothered anymore. I might want to sort of just give it a rest for a while, or I might give up. And they were very good at saying, well, look, just keep going for a little while, see how you go. And they encouraged us to keep playing, and they encouraged us to join groups as well. So I remember being part of a youth orchestra and a youth opera group when I was little. But those kind of things that actually made us meet with other people. And sometimes I think it doesn't really matter what it is you get involved in, as long as you're really there and you're enjoying it and you're loving it, and the leaders are good and they're charismatic, and you're sort of swept along with their enthusiasm for something. So my forte now is singing. That's what I make. My sort of I suppose my time for me as a musician, the thing that feeds me in terms of my need for performance.
Singer-wise, may I ask?
It's mainly sort of classical things. So I conduct choirs, but I also perform as a soloist for different groups. I go out and do oratorios and things like that. So I suppose it's more on the classical side for me. But I also love being involved in musicals and getting involved with that sort of thing. So it's lovely. I suppose as a child I was introduced to opera. As an adult, I introduced myself to musicals, and I love that kind of if I can go down to the West End and see a musical there, which I've not done very often, but when I do it just inspires me no end. It's absolutely great.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So does learning and developing musical skills have an age limit?
Absolutely not. No, it's something that in fact we have changed quite a bit recently. Our music centres, we have 5 music centres that are dotted around Kirklees, and they used to be for young people to come and access those. And probably about 4 or 5 years ago, we started saying, well, we'll run a few adult ensembles, and they really took off. Rather, the adults really wanted to be involved in that. And so now they're much more of community-based centres, so that when somebody comes along to one of our groups, maybe they're involved in a wind band or a jazz orchestra or something like that, then they'll come along and they could be performing alongside people of any age. And I think probably that when you're young, it's easier to assimilate different musical language, and as we get older, as I'm finding out more and more now, it's harder to learn all those new things, but you're never too old to learn. And actually that feeling of community and engagement with your community is so important. And I'd say whatever age you are, just get involved, whether it's singing or it's playing an instrument. It's good. There's all sorts of physical benefits as well for people that I don't think people realise.
Really, like what?
Just as a singer in a choir, there was some research done into how people related to each other, and actually they found that when they were singing a piece together, the people's heart rate started to synchronise, and this incredible feeling of bonding with people, not through anything outward, but just you get that feeling of complete unity and complete working together. It was quite fascinating, the research, but it's the when you're standing up and you're breathing properly and you're singing, you're using your body as you should be doing. It's also, music is proven to be one of the only activities that uses both right and left sides of the brain. So it's actually incredible in terms of things like dementia. There was an amazing programme recently that Vicky McClure did on a dementia choir, and it was just unlocked people, because people who suffer from dementia sometimes they close in on themselves, but sometimes if you give a song, people will just wake up and they'll remember all the lyrics and all the words, and they can sing all the way through it, especially if it's things from their childhood. So there's all sorts of incredible benefits that I think we don't tap into as much as we should do. Music is also meant to be improving people's recovery time. So actually being involved in something, whether it's performing or listening to music, it actually gives you that feel-good factor that helps people recovery after they've had operations and things like that. So it's phenomenal, the research that's going on at the moment, and I think we're just starting to unlock that kind of power. So yeah.
Oh, so music really is a life-giving force, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it keeps people going as well. I think it keeps you, if you're learning music. I know from some of the guys who sing in my male voice choir, you're learning music, you're constantly challenging yourself, you're learning new repertoire, things that perhaps weren't around when you were young, but you're learning new things, and you're making your brain work overtime, all the time to try and memorize all those words, and you're listening to harmonies and other people singing things, and you're trying to sort of put your part against their part. So it's an intellectual activity as well as a fun thing to do. Yeah.
So one thing that's coming up in the future is the 20th birthday of Musica Kirklees' youth orchestra. Correct?
Yes.
We've got a nice little flower for you. It's a really good flower, by the way.
Right.
But, so what's set to take place? What will you be showcasing?
Well, the youth orchestra, as you said, we it's the 20th anniversary. What happened actually was that in the probably 60s, 70s, there was, and the 80s as well, there was a really flourishing orchestral scene in Kirklees. But it sort of fizzled out a little bit, and it was when I joined in 1999. We found that there wasn't a youth orchestra anymore, and we used to have, I think, 7 youth orchestras in Kirklees area alone, which is quite incredible. So we said, well, let's have a playing day, and let's get people together and see if they want to start something up again. And we had almost 100 people came along to that first playing day, and we asked them, what do you want to do? Do you want to have it as maybe a holiday course that you come along to and play? And they said, no, we'd like it as a weekly event, something that we can get together in a week and do concerts and things. And so it was really born in the year 2000. We sort of said, well, let's set this up and let's go with it. So what we've decided to do with this 20th anniversary concert is to look back over those 20 years and see if we can pick some of the different pieces of music that people played over that time, and we'll showcase some of it at a concert which is going to be on the 8th of February in the Huddersfield Town Hall. So it's going to have like a first half which will be more classically based. So they're probably going to be sort of well-known classics and things like Holst Planet Suite, which probably people think, I have no idea what Holst Planet Suite is, but if you listen to it, you think, oh yeah, it's that, because quite often classical music is used for films as backing tracks, it's used in adverts, it's used all sorts of places that we don't realise it, and then all of a sudden you hear it and you think, that's where it comes from, that's that piece of music. So, and then we'll go into the second half, and we'll probably do some film music, things like Pirates of the Caribbean score, that kind of thing, which has always been well received, and some songs that we've used in the past, like Come What May from Moulin Rouge, which is it's a brilliant song, and people don't usually associate that with a classical orchestra. But the nice thing about working in a youth orchestra is that they are just open to tackling anything. So we've done contemporary music, we've had music written for us so we could accompany a puppet show, all sorts of just brilliant things that happened that are great experiences. So we'll try and present a really wide range of music, and I think there'll hopefully be something for everybody there.
I mean, you've got a taste of the familiar, but you're also exposing people to loads of different stuff. It sounds very promising to me.
Yeah, I love it. It's one of the highlights of my week is going and taking the orchestra rehearsals. I really look forward to it. Yeah, well, it's practical music making. Yeah. What more could you want? Yeah.
Let's close out with an important question. Is a wider support for the arts and networking within the arts important right now?
Yeah, absolutely. More important now than it ever has been, I think. We're looking at ever shrinking funding streams for things, and quite often people are looking at it and saying, I don't know if music's for me, and I think it's because we're not able to give as much as we should be able to do early on in people's education. So I think that sort of funding is vital to give people who otherwise wouldn't have the chance, the opportunity to get involved in it, and people will naturally sort of gravitate to the area where they feel they are most comfortable. So if you're comfortable with the more traditional side of music, then great. If you're not, if you want to go for something more contemporary and more avant-garde, more breaking the boundaries, then there should be all sorts of ways that we can encourage people into those areas. We've got a thing that we call the gift of music, which is just basically for businesses who are interested in that kind of sponsorship to make a donation, and that money goes directly to young people who otherwise just would not be able to afford that kind of thing, to supporting them in having sustained music lessons, not just giving them a one-off experience and then saying, that was really nice, now go and do something else, but saying, right, well, over the next 3 years or so, we'll support you in having instrumental lessons so that you can, you can see the benefits that everybody else who's had that opportunity got. The kind of benefits I got, I was lucky enough to be at a time when that kind of thing was free. Now it's not free, so we've got to try and make sure that we provide it for people. So yeah, from businesses, I think governments have got a real duty for that kind of thing as well. We are part of what's called the Kirklees Music Education Hub, and there is some money that's given to supporting lots of different areas of music making, and that's right the way across the country. But when you look back on what the funding used to be, we're not getting as much as they used to be, 20, 30 years ago. So it's trying to make sure that keeps pace with the times, and we allow as many people as want to the opportunity to get involved with it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for your time, honestly.
My pleasure.
It's great to hear so many passionate words from someone so dedicated. Anyways, I've been Daniel Antunes, reporting for Kirklees Local TV. Thank you for joining us.